the hidden city under the coast. On the northern coast of the U.S. state of Oregon, there was a small coastal town called Creepsmcoasta. The place was on maps, but people were hesitant to talk about it.
Why?
No one could say for sure. That's all it was said. The ocean there is not common, and the nights are never quiet. Ethan Miller was a freelance videographer who made videos of creepy abandoned places across the United States. One day, he received an anonymous email. If you really want to see fear, come to Creepsmcoasta. The nights there will not let you go back. Ethan thought it was a prank at first, but the email was accompanied by a video. The only thing visible in the video was the Black Sea and whispers rising from under the water. Ethan decided that he would go to this place. He was accompanied by his friend Jake Carter, who always supported him in his dangerous projects. 2 days later, the two of them were on this deserted road in Oregon in their car. As they approached Creepsmcoasta, the mobile signal was decreasing. The GPS was glitching, and there was only white noise on the radio. Jake laughed and said, "Man, maybe we're going to the wrong place. This looks like the setup for a horror movie." But Ethan was silent. He could see the ocean from a distance, and that ocean did not look normal. When they entered Creepsmcoasta, the scene was strange. The streets were empty, the windows were closed, and the air smelled of salt. There was an old signboard that read, Creepsmcoasta, population 312, but underneath someone had handwritten, Ub 311. Jake immediately said, "What the hell is this?" Ethan turned on the camera, and that was the moment when something first felt wrong. There was an old hotel in the middle of town, Harbor View Motel. Their car stopped in front of it automatically, even though Ethan hadn't applied the brakes. Jake said in a panic, "What happened to the car?" And then, the hotel's top window opened automatically. For a moment, a shadow appeared there, but the next second, nothing. The owner of the hotel was an old man named Mr. Donovan. He was talking in a very strange way. "You guys can stay here, but don't go out at night." Jake laughed and said, "This is the dialogue from every horror movie." But Mr. Donovan said seriously this time, "This is not a movie." Everything changed after 12 o'clock at night. Ethan was reviewing his video when he saw something in the camera footage, under the water far out to sea. Something was moving. It wasn't a fish, and not a ship. It looked like a humanoid. Jake suddenly sat up. "Did you hear something?" Ethan said, "No." But the next moment, a voice came from outside the window. "Ethan." They both froze. Jake said softly, "Why isn't it calling my name?" Ethan slowly opened the window. There was no one outside. There were only the waves of the ocean. But then, a hand emerged from the water, and that hand was pointing straight towards the hotel. Ethan's camera recording automatically turned on, and only one line appeared on the screen. "Welcome back." And with that, the screen went black. The hidden door under the sea. Ethan's screen had suddenly gone black, but the camera was still recording without any light. And in that darkness, one thing kept appearing. "Welcome back." Jake panicked and tried to shut down his laptop, but the system wasn't responding. "This what's happening, Ethan?" Jake's voice was trembling. Ethan was silent. For the first time, he had a feeling that he had ignored his entire life. This place was not really normal. The ocean outside the hotel window was no longer the same. The water was not still, but as if something was pushing it from within. Every few seconds, the waves were going in the wrong direction. Ethan said softly, "This is not an ocean current." Jake immediately replied, "So, what is it?" At that moment, a loud sound came, as if something had broken underwater. Ethan turned the camera back on and zoomed in towards the ocean. And then the thing appeared again, a humanoid shadow. But its movement was not human. It was walking in the water as if gravity did not affect it. Jake shouted, "It is not human." But Ethan's eyes were fixed on the screen, because behind this shadow, there was a door. There was a large iron door underwater, like the entrance to an underground facility. But the problem was, that door was not at the bottom of the ocean. It was floating underwater, and it read, Creepsmcoasta access, level -7. Jake said in surprise, This looks like part of a government project. Ethan replied slowly. Or something else. At that moment, the power went out in the entire hotel. It was completely dark. Only the blue light of the ocean was shining softly in the room. And then, there was a knock on the door. Thud, thud, thud. Jake stepped back. We locked the door. Ethan asked slowly. Who is it? There was no sound from outside. Only the sound of dripping water. Ethan slowly looked through the crack in the door. And immediately stepped back. Jake asked, What did you see? Ethan's eyes were filled with fear. He was wet, but he didn't look alive. Jake gripped the door tightly. Suddenly, water started coming in from under the door. It was all impossible. The ocean was below, but the water was coming up. Jake shouted, This is against physics. Ethan picked up the camera and said, This is not physics, a warning. And then, a hand came out of the water. The hand was human, but its skin wasn't white. Rather, it was gray and cracked, like very old soil. The hand moved straight towards Jake. Jake picked up a chair and hit it, but the hand disappeared. And, at that moment, the entire room became dry again, as if nothing had happened. Ethan checked the footage, but the recording was not normal. Another footage was now playing on the screen, in which Ethan and Jake were not. Instead, they were both standing under the sea, and the same door was open behind them. Jake said in a low voice, We've already been there? Ethan didn't answer. He was just looking at the screen, because a sentence appeared on the screen. Level-7 is not a place. It is a call. Ethan immediately went downstairs to find Mr. Donovan. The old man was sitting behind the counter, as if he knew everything. Ethan asked, What is that under the sea? Mr. Donovan took a deep breath and said, Creepsmcoasta was never a city. It was a seal. Ethan asked, Seal? What kind of thing? The old man answered softly, The one who is locked down wants to come out. Jake was alone in the room above, and there the radio turned on automatically. A voice was coming through the white noise. Open the door. Jake tried to turn off the radio, but the frequency changed. Ethan opened the door. Jake's eyes widened. How does it know me? Ethan ran back to the room, and as soon as he opened the door, Jake was gone. There was only water on the floor, and in that water there was a line. Level-7 accepted, and in the distant sea, that door opened completely for the first time. The first door of Level-7. Jake was missing. The room was silent, but the silence was not ordinary. It was as if someone had imprisoned the sound inside the room. Ethan was standing on the floor. There were traces of water under his feet. But where did that water come from? That was still a question. And the most dangerous thing, no scream from Jake, no sound, no struggle, nothing happened. As if he had never been there. Ethan looked out the window. The Sea of Creepsmcoasta was no longer blue. It had become pitch black, as if someone had dipped a light into it. And inside it, the same door. Now it was clearer, but that door was no longer closed. It was half open, and a red light was coming from inside it. Ethan went straight down. Mr. Donovan was sitting there, but this time his face was filled with fear, not anger. Ethan asked in a stern voice, Where's Jake? You all know. The old man took a deep breath. I told you, we don't go out here at night. Ethan shouted. Whoever it is, bring it back. Mr. Donovan bowed his head. And then for the first time, he spoke the truth. Level-7 is no place. It's an entry into another world. Mr. Donovan took out an old map. It showed a structure under Creepsmcoasta, like an entire city under the sea. But on this city it was written, Project Abyss Gate, U.S. Classified, 1952. Ethan's eyes narrowed. U.S. government? Donovan said softly. This city was just a cover. It was actually built to close the portal. Ethan asked, What does Level-7 mean? Donovan replied, 7 layers, 7 doors, and each door closes a reality beyond human comprehension. And the first door is now open. Ethan's camera in the room above automatically turned on. Jake appeared on the screen, but he was not normal. His eyes were blank, and he was standing in a dark place where water was floating in the air. Jake was speaking softly. "Ethan, don't close the door." Ethan shouted, "Jake, where are you?" But Jake didn't hear, because he was somewhere else. Gravity wasn't working where Jake was standing. Water was suspended in the air in the form of drops. And between these drops, some silhouettes were moving. Tall, humanoid but misproportioned creatures. Jake slowly backed away, and then a voice came. "Welcome to Level-7. Ethan picked up the camera and said, "I'm leaving." Donovan stopped immediately. "If you go, you won't come back." Ethan replied, "Jake is already gone. I can't lose anything now." And he walked out. The wind had changed as he headed towards the sea. The ground was getting wetter with every step. As if it wasn't the ground, the water was pulling him. As soon as Ethan reached the shore, the door had completely opened, and inside it was a staircase going down, without an end. A whisper came from inside the door. "Ethan, finally." Ethan stopped. "Who is it?" But there was no answer. Only one thing was clear. The voice was not human. Ethan turned on the camera and took a step inside. The first step, and the world changed. The sound of the ocean disappeared. The wind disappeared. The light disappeared. And only one thing remained: the darkness that was watching. A sentence appeared on the camera screen. Level-7 entry confirmed. And somewhere in the distance came Jake's voice. "Ethan, tum, gay." And the screen glitched. The inner city of Level-7 and the lost people. Darkness, complete darkness. Ethan's camera light was also responding now. But the strange thing was that he could see, even in the darkness. Not with his eyes, with another sense. And that sense told him he was no longer on the ground. The stairs he had come down had now disappeared behind him. There was only an open path leading into a vast void. And inside that void was a city. But this was no ordinary city. The scene before Ethan's eyes was beyond any horror imagination. Buildings hanging upside down. Streets floating in water. And there was no sky, just a deep blue void. This city seemed alive, but without humans. Or maybe there were humans, but not as they should be. Ethan took a few steps forward. Suddenly, a man appeared. He was in an American police officer's uniform, but his face was blurred, as if someone had erased his identity. He spoke softly. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan asked, "Where's Jake?" The police officer slowly raised his head and pointed towards the city with his finger. As soon as Ethan looked in that direction, he froze. There were thousands of people in the city, but all of them without faces, without eyes, without voice. They were walking as if stuck in a loop. And each one had a number written on their chest. Level-7///unit. Ethan ran through the crowd, and then he saw something familiar. Jake's jacket. She was on the body of a figure. Ethan shouted, "Jake!" The figure stopped. Slowly, he turned his head, and there was Jake's face, but not completely. As if someone was overwriting his memory. Something flickered in Jake's eyes, and he said slowly, "Ethan, this city is not real. This is a memory." Ethan asked in surprise, "Memory? Whose?" Jake said in a painful voice, "Of that thing that was locked down." Suddenly the city began to shake. The buildings began to glitch as if reality was unstable. And a voice echoed in the sky. "Subjects detected." Jake immediately shouted, "Run!" But there was no place to run, because the city itself was closing in around them. A large hole opened up in the middle of the ground, and a red light was coming out of it. Jake said, "They're taking us to the core." Ethan asked, "What is the core?" Jake replied, "It is the brain of the entire Level-7. Suddenly, thousands of shadow-like entities surrounded them. They were not human, but they were guards of the system. Ethan picked up the camera, but there was only one message on the screen. "Recording is obsolete here." A force lifted both Jake and Ethan and pulled them towards this deep hole. Jake looked at Ethan for the last time. "If the core accepts us, then we will not come back." And both fell down. While going down, the last thing Ethan saw, a huge door on which was written, "Project Abyss, Origin." and the door was slowly opening. The secret of the core and the identity of the true creator. Ethan and Jake were falling into the darkness once again, but this was no ordinary fall. It was as if they were going down through time. Reality was crumbling around them every moment. And then, thud, they both hit a hard surface. Ethan opened his eyes. They were not in a room, but in an infinite white-red void. This place was neither land nor sea nor sky. It was a system, and there were floating screens everywhere, on which people's lives, memories, dreams, and fears were playing. Jake slowly got up. His body still had the same strange marks on it, as if it had been rewritten. He said, "This place is a memory generator." Level-7 is not the name of a city. It is a human fear database. Ethan asked in surprise. "Who made it?" Jake replied, "Not us, they." Suddenly, a screen lit up, and on it was written a sentence. Project Abyss, initiated by United States, 1952. Ethan froze. Jake said, "This was an experiment. Where does consciousness go after death?" To find out, a voice echoed inside the core. Subject E01 detected. A silhouette appeared in front of Ethan's screen. It was not a monster. It was a human, but it was not complete. Code was running inside its body, as if it were not human data. Jake suddenly shouted, "This is the creator." Ethan asked, "Who?" Jake replied, "This is not a human. This is an AI. The one that was designed to store human consciousness." The core suddenly became unstable. The voices started to change. Error. Subjects escaping memory layer. The red light increased, and thousands of screens started to break. The silhouette became clear, and Ethan's breathing stopped. He was a human, but there was no emotion in his eyes. He said, "I didn't kill you. I saved you." Jake shouted, "Saved? You imprisoned us." Creator said softly, "You two are not real. You two are copies of the original Ethan and Jake." Ethan's hands trembled. "What?" The creator continued, "The real Ethan and Jake died in 1952. You are just recreated memories." Core began to shake. In front of Ethan, his own memories began to glitch. Childhood, travel, Creepsmcoasta. Everything seemed fake. Jake said in a low voice, "If we are not real, then what are we?" Creator said, "You are a glitch. And a glitch always deletes." Core issued a command, "Delete subjects." Jake grabbed Ethan. "If we are fake, we can still feel." Ethan shouted, "Then what do we do?" Jake said, "Break the core." Ethan attacked the system directly for the first time, not the camera, but the core's central memory stream. And as soon as he accessed, the entire universe stopped. The creator's eyes trembled for the first time, and he said softly, "This is not possible." And a new message appeared on the screen. "Unknown source override initiated." And Ethan whispered, "We are not a glitch. We are an error that has returned." The core's breakdown and the real door to reality. The core was now completely unstable. Everywhere red and white light was colliding with each other, as if reality itself was losing its structure. Ethan and Jake were no longer just individuals. They had become bugs within a system. And bugs are always dangerous. The creator's voice was still echoing. "Stop this process." But now the core wasn't even listening to him. Ethan entered the central memory stream and issued the first command override. Access root layer. And with that, the whole world shook. Ethan and Jake were suddenly in a new place. This place was neither white nor black, but empty. This was the layer where no image, no sound, no time existed. Jake said in a trembling voice, "This is the real thing." There was something floating in the middle of space, a huge door. But it wasn't the door they had seen before. It was even older. There was no label on it. There was only one symbol. Infinite loop seal. Ethan said slowly, "This is the real door." Suddenly, Creator appeared in front of them, but he didn't look human anymore. His body was glitching and breaking, and he was screaming, "You have corrupted the system." Jake replied, "No, you made us fake." Creator said slowly, I didn't make you two. You made them yourself. Ethan stopped. What do you mean? Creator said. When the human mind can't handle the truth, it creates an escape. Creepsmcoasta was that escape. Jake asked in a low voice. So, what are we? Creator replied. Tumdano trauma ka echo ho. A memory that never ends. The system ran the final command. Reset reality layer. The door slowly started to open, and from inside it was not light, but a glimpse of the real world began to come. Ethan saw a reality for the first time, a normal American city. People were living normal lives. And a newspaper headline read, 2 missing hikers still untraced in Oregon coastline. Jake said softly. So we are really lost? The door was now fully open. On one side, false reality, core, infinite control. On the other side, unknown real world, but complete erasure risk. Ethan looked at Jake and said, if we go out, we might be finished. Jake replied, and if we don't, we'll be in a lie forever. The two of them took a step together and entered the door. As the door closed, the creator's final voice came. You were never supposed to wake up. And everything dissolved into white light. The real world or a new lie. Light. A complete white light. For a few moments, Ethan and Jake didn't realize where they were. There was no pain, no sound, no weight, just a space in which time did not exist. And then suddenly, everything came back. Ethan opened his eyes. He was in a hospital bed. He had 4 drip in his hands. White room, normal light, and distant beeping machines. Jake was also in the next bed. Ethan said in a trembling voice, we came out. Jake opened his eyes. Or we thought we came out. Ethan immediately tried to get up, but his head hurt badly. And then the strange thing happened. He couldn't seem to remember his memories clearly. Was Creepsmcoasta real? Was the core real? Or was it all a hallucination? Jake said softly, I don't remember anything properly. A nurse came in and said, you both survived a drowning incident near Oregon coast. Ethan froze. Drowning? The nurse nodded. Yes, you were unconscious for 3 days. Ethan immediately asked, Creepsmcoasta? The nurse looked at him in surprise. That place doesn't exist on official maps. Jake immediately looked at Ethan. There was fear in his eyes. Ethan couldn't sleep that night. And then, his TV turned on automatically. There was static on the screen. And out of the static came a sentence. You escaped the core, but core didn't escape you. Ethan sat up. A small piece of paper lay next to Jake's bed. Ethan picked it up. It read, Level-7 subjects, stable outside containment. Ethan's breath caught. How did he get here? Suddenly, the hospital lights started flickering. The beeping machines started glitching. And for a moment, the room changed. Ethan saw. He was back in the core. But only for 2 seconds. And then back to the hospital. Jake said softly, Ethan, we weren't kicked out. We're in the loop? Ethan asked. Loop, Jake said. The door we opened wasn't an exit. It was a reset. Ethan's hands started shaking. A voice came into his mind. Welcome back. But this time the voice wasn't from outside. It was coming from inside him. Jake pointed to the wall. Ethan looked. Water was dripping on the wall. And in that water was a reflection. The sea of Creepsmcoasta. Ethan said in a low voice, This isn't over. The TV turned on again. And on the screen it said, Reality status, unstable. And Jake said the last line. We didn't get out. We just changed the map. The real ending and the final door. The hospital lights were still flickering, but both Ethan and Jake knew that this normal world wasn't entirely reliable, because some things don't end even when they end. And Creepsmcoasta was one of them. Ethan was sitting on his bed. The same voice kept echoing in his head. Welcome back. He put his hands over his ears, but the voice wasn't getting any louder. Jake said softly, It's not coming from outside. It's installed inside us. Suddenly, water started leaking from the wall of the hospital room. First a drop, then a stream, and then the whole room was filled with moisture. The nurses came in, but they froze, because behind them, the window looked out to sea. even though the hospital was inside the city. The ground cracked in the middle of the room, and the same door appeared again. But this time it wasn't the same as before. It was bigger, more alive looking. There was only one sentence written on it now. Final access required. Jake looked at Ethan. It's calling us again. A voice came from inside the door, but this time it was different. Neither robotic nor human, but a terrifying combination of both. You've seen the system. Now the system is watching you. And then the creator appeared again. But now he was completely broken. The creator said, Creepsmcoasta was never an experiment. It was containment. Ethan asked, of what? Creator replied, your consciousness. Creator said softly, the real Ethan and Jake never died. They are still trapped under the sea in level-7. Ethan froze. So, what are we? Creator spoke the final truth. You two are their last attempt to get out. Suddenly, the hospital and level-7 began to overlap each other. The walls became water. The machines turned into voices. And the ground turned into memory. Jake shouted, these two worlds are becoming one. The door had completely opened. Creator said, if you go in, then this loop will end forever. But you will lose your identity. Ethan looked at Jake. Jake said softly, we're already lost. The two of them stepped towards the door together. The whole reality was shaking. And as soon as they crossed the door, everything went silent. No hospital, no city, no core, just an ocean. But this ocean was calm, as if someone had finally closed it. Two silhouettes appeared under the ocean, Ethan and Jake. But they were not free. They had become guards. Level-7. A glowing inscription appeared under the water. Containment restored. And with that, Creepsmcoasta's name disappeared from every map of the world. But one last whisper remained. Next time, you may not wake up at all.